For 25 years, my husband vanished every October without fail. "Just business conferences," he'd say with that reassuring smile I trusted completely. Until the day I found something hidden behind his bookshelf, something that wasn't meant to be found. What happens when a single photograph shatters the foundation of your entire life? And what secrets lie beneath the surface of a marriage that everyone else believes is perfect? It was a Wednesday afternoon when my neighbor asked me to water her collection of exotic plants while she was away at a family reunion. Little did I know that tending to those innocent ferns would lead me to uncover the truth behind my husband's annual disappearances. A truth that would shatter the foundation of our 38-year marriage and force me to question everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and the man I had spent nearly 4 decades with. For 25 years, James had religiously disappeared every October, claiming he was attending an exclusive investment conference in different cities across Europe. As the senior financial advisor at his firm, these trips seemed reasonable, necessary even. I never questioned them. I would kiss him goodbye at the airport, watch his plane depart, and return to our empty house to wait patiently for his return, just as any devoted wife would do. That Wednesday changed everything. While searching for the plant mister in James's study, a room I rarely entered out of respect for his privacy, I accidentally knocked over a stack of financial folders from his bookshelf. As I knelt to gather the scattered papers, my fingers brushed against something hidden behind the lowest shelf, a false panel I never knew existed. Inside was a sleek metal box, locked with a simple combination. I shouldn't have tried to open it, but the strange feeling that had been growing inside me for years, that quiet, nagging doubt I had buried beneath layers of trust and routine, suddenly demanded attention. The combination wasn't difficult to guess. 10:15, October 15th, the day he always left. The box contained no financial records, no investment portfolios. Instead, I found dozens of photographs showing my husband with the same dark-haired woman over a span of decades, standing before the same mansion in the French countryside. The mansion grew more magnificent in each photo, transforming from a crumbling historic estate to a breathtaking masterpiece. On the back of the most recent photo, in James's distinctive handwriting, Château de Lumière, year 25, almost complete. My hands trembled as I stared at the images. The woman's face was familiar, Vivienne Laurent, the famous historical preservationist whose work I'd admired in magazines. The woman James had almost married before me. I don't remember how long I sat there on the study floor, photos scattered around me like fallen leaves. The room seemed to shrink and expand with each labored breath I took. Sunlight streamed through the window, catching dust particles in its beam. How ordinary, how mundane, while my world collapsed inward. My fingers felt numb as I examined each photograph more carefully. Some showed James and Vivian studying architectural plans together. Others captured them sharing meals in what appeared to be the château's gradually renovating dining room. In one particularly painful image, they stood side by side in evening attire, champagne glasses raised in celebration, her head resting comfortably on his shoulder. The date on the back read, October 15th, 2022, just 7 months ago. I thought about calling my sister, my closest friend, anyone who might help me make sense of this revelation. But shame kept my phone in my pocket. How could I explain that for 25 years I hadn't noticed, hadn't wanted to notice, that my husband was living a double life? A sound escaped my throat, something between a laugh and a sob. All those souvenirs he'd brought back from his conferences. The Belgian chocolates, Italian scarves, French wines. Had they been guilt offerings? Breadcrumbs from his real life that I'd been too blind to follow? I carefully returned everything to the box except for one photo, the most recent one. This I slipped into my cardigan pocket. The rest I placed back behind the false panel, arranging the folders exactly as they had been. James wasn't due home for 3 more days. I needed time to think, to plan what I would say when he returned. That night, sleep eluded me. I lay awake, retracing our marriage like a detective searching for missed clues. The separate bank account he maintained for retirement planning, his insistence on handling all our finances, the way he always returned from his trips with a renewed energy, as if he'd been recharged by something or someone that I couldn't provide. By morning, my shock had crystallized into something harder, colder, a quiet rage that settled in my bones and strengthened my resolve. I would not cry, not yet. First, I needed answers. The next morning, I did something I had never done before. I called in sick to the community college where I taught literature part-time. In 38 years of marriage, I had been the reliable one, the steady one, while James pursued his ambitious career. Today would be different. With trembling fingers, I typed Vivienne Laurent restoration projects into my laptop. Hundreds of results appeared. Articles, interviews, award ceremonies. Vivienne was celebrated for breathing life into forgotten historical properties across Europe. I clicked on her official website. There it was, prominently featured in her portfolio, Château de Lumière. The description read, "A 25-year passion project to restore one of France's most neglected architectural treasures. Completion celebration scheduled this October. 25 years. The exact time span of James's annual disappearances." I dug deeper, finding an interview from last year where she mentioned her silent partner, who had been instrumental in the restoration. "Some things are too precious to share with the world," she had said with a cryptic smile. "Sometimes the most beautiful restorations happen in private." My research led me to our bank statements, which James always insisted on handling. After several failed password attempts, I finally gained access using our anniversary date. What I found made my stomach lurch. Large transfers every September, $50,000, then $75,000, eventually reaching $100,000 in recent years, all to an account in Lyon, France. Money I didn't know we had, from investments I'd never been told about. Our retirement fund was half what James had always claimed. By midday, I'd compiled enough evidence to confront him immediately, but something held me back. What would confrontation achieve? A hasty explanation? More lies? No, I needed to see his face when I asked him about Vivienne. I needed to watch his eyes, to know once and for all if anything in our marriage had been real. I made one final search before closing my laptop. Château de Lumière opening gala. The result showed an elegant invitation to an exclusive celebration on October 15th this year, the milestone 25th anniversary, the completion of their project. Would this be James's final trip, or merely the beginning of a new chapter that didn't include me? James returned on Sunday evening, his arrival heralded by the familiar sound of his Mercedes in the driveway. I had prepared myself for this moment, rehearsed my words, steadied my voice. Yet when he walked through the door, suitcase in hand, and wearing the contented smile he always bore after his conferences, my carefully constructed composure threatened to crumble. "Helen," he called cheerfully, setting down his bags. "I brought you those Belgian chocolates you love." I sat in the living room, the photograph resting on the coffee table between us. I had turned on every light in the room, no shadows to hide in, no dimness to soften what was about to happen. "How was Geneva?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. "Productive." He loosened his tie. "Though these conferences get more tedious each year, I'm getting too old for the networking game." "Geneva must be beautiful in the spring," I continued, watching him closely. "It is, though I hardly had time to see much of it. You know how these things are, meetings from dawn until dusk." "Strange," I said, finally reaching for the photograph. "I would have thought France was lovely this time of year. The Burgundy region, perhaps?" The color drained from his face as I turned the photograph toward him. His hand froze mid-movement, tie half loosened. "Helen, I can explain," he began, but I cut him off. 25 years, James. 25 Octobers. Was anything you ever told me true? He sank into the armchair across from me, suddenly looking every one of his 67 years. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" "Because what I think is that you've been living a double life with Vivienne Laurent while using our money we were supposed to retire on, to restore some fairy tale château in France." His eyes widened. "You've been investigating me?" "Don't you dare act offended," I said, my voice finally cracking. "You sacrificed our future for her. For what? Some youthful romance you couldn't let go of?" "It wasn't about romance," he said defensively. "It was about preserving history, about creating a legacy. Vivienne needed an investor, a partner who understood her vision. The chateau would have been demolished otherwise. And our marriage? Was that worth preserving? Or was I just the convenient wife who kept your home running while you built a second life with her?" He stood up abruptly. "You're making this sordid when it isn't. This was business, Helen, an investment." "In what, James? In her? In some fantasy life where you're not an aging financial advisor from Connecticut, but a sophisticated patron of the arts?" His expression hardened. "You wouldn't understand. You've never understood ambition." With those words, something inside me broke irreparably. The days following our confrontation unfolded in a strange, suspended reality. James and I moved through our house like ghosts, carefully avoiding each other's paths. He slept in the guest room without me having to ask. When we did occupy the same space, our interactions were clinical, detached, discussing weather forecasts and mail deliveries, as if we were distant acquaintances rather than people who had shared nearly 4 decades of marriage. But beneath this veneer of forced civility, I was changing. Each morning, I would wake before James and prepare only my own breakfast, leaving the kitchen pristine but empty when he came downstairs. His coffee mug remained untouched in the cabinet. His favorite bread stayed unpurchased. I stopped doing his laundry. His shirts piled up in the hamper. His suits remained unworn. When he finally ran out of clean clothes, he awkwardly carried a bundle to the washing machine, staring at the settings as if deciphering ancient hieroglyphics. "The delicate cycle for your dress shirts," I said from the doorway, not offering to help. "And don't mix the colors." He looked up, startled by my presence and perhaps by my tone. Neither helpful nor angry, just matter of fact. Something in his eyes seemed to ask, "Is this how it's going to be now?" I turned and walked away, answering his unspoken question. I called our financial advisor, not James's colleague, but an independent consultant I found myself. I moved half of our joint savings into an account under only my name, not out of vengeance but self-preservation. For the first time in our marriage, I thought of my future as separate from his. During this period of quiet rebellion, I made another significant change. I withdrew my name from consideration for department chair at the college, a position I had coveted for years, but always delayed pursuing because James insisted his career took precedence. Instead, I submitted an application for a 6-month visiting professorship at Oxford. "You did what?" James asked when I mentioned it casually over dinner one evening. "Separate meals, we happened to eat at the same table." "I applied to teach in England next semester," I repeated. "They're offering a specialist course on British women writers. It seemed like the perfect time to pursue it." "But your life is here," he said, genuinely baffled. "Your routine, your friends, your garden club." I looked at him directly, letting my gaze hold steady. "My routine was built around your schedule, James. My life was constructed to accommodate yours. It seems we've both been investing in different futures. I'm simply catching up." That night, I heard him pacing in the guest room until dawn. The annual 4th of July barbecue at our son Michael's home in Massachusetts had been a family tradition for years. This year, I considered making an excuse to avoid it. The thought of pretending that everything was normal seemed impossible. But in the end, I decided that facing my family was an inevitable step I couldn't postpone. James and I drove separately, another first. The strained silence of a 3-hour car journey would have been unbearable. When I arrived, our daughter-in-law Claire immediately sensed something was wrong. "Mom, are you okay?" she whispered while helping me carry a dessert tray to the patio. "You seem different." "I'm fine, dear," I assured her with a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "Just tired from the drive." The afternoon progressed with forced normalcy. James charmed our grandchildren as always, pushing 8-year-old Emma on the swing set, helping 5-year-old Tyler with his new Lego spaceship. I watched from a distance, wondering how he could compartmentalize so effectively. The devoted grandfather here, the secret château renovator in France. "Dad seems normal, but you're definitely not." Michael cornered me in the kitchen later. "What's going on? Are you sick? Is Dad sick?" I considered deflecting, but the weight of secrecy had become too heavy to bear alone. "Your father has been keeping secrets," I said quietly. "Significant ones, for many years." Michael's expression shifted from concern to confusion. "What kind of secrets?" In measured tones, I explained what I'd discovered: the hidden photographs, the annual trips, the diverted funds, the château and Vivienne Laurent. Michael's face darkened as I spoke, his hands gripping the counter edge. "That's impossible," he stated flatly when I finished. "Dad wouldn't do that. There must be some explanation. Maybe it's really just a business investment." His immediate defense of his father shouldn't have surprised me, but the dismissal of my pain still stung sharply. "Your father admitted it, Michael. He's been living a double life for 25 years. And you're what, leaving him over this? At your age?" Michael's voice rose slightly. "Mom, be reasonable. So he renovated a building with some old friend. It doesn't mean anything." "It means everything," I corrected him gently. "It means he lied. It means he took money we needed for retirement. It means he made choices that excluded me for decades." "Everyone has their secrets," Michael insisted. "Dad's worked hard his whole life. If this was his hobby or whatever, why destroy everything over it now? Just let it go." I looked at my son, this man I had raised, who now stood before me suggesting I should simply accept betrayal as an inevitable part of marriage. And in that moment, I realized how profoundly James's values had shaped our son's understanding of what a woman should tolerate from her husband. 3 weeks after the disastrous 4th of July gathering, I found myself sitting alone in our garden at dawn. Sleep had become elusive, and I'd taken to watching the sunrise, finding comfort in the reliability of nature's rhythms when everything in my human world felt unstable. That particular morning, as golden light spilled across the hydrangeas I'd tended for decades, a memory surfaced, so vivid it took my breath away. I was 24 again, standing in my parents' kitchen, telling my mother I'd accepted James's proposal. "Are you sure, Helen?" she'd asked, her expression concerned. "You've only known him a year, and what about your plans for graduate school in England?" "I can study anywhere," I'd answered confidently. "James has that job offer in Hartford. It's a great opportunity for him." "And for you?" My mother's question hung in the air. I never did get that doctorate. Instead, I supported James through his career advancement, moving 3 times for his promotions, putting my own ambitions on hold, believing we were building something meaningful together. I had taught at community colleges, raised our son, maintained our home, hosted his business dinners, all while telling myself that sacrifice was the foundation of a strong marriage. Now, watching the sun illuminate my garden, I finally asked myself the question that had been forming in my subconscious for weeks. What would my life have been if I had chosen differently? If I had pursued my own dreams with the same single-minded determination with which James had pursued his, and Vivian's? The answer came with startling clarity. I would have been a different woman, Perhaps a professor at Oxford rather than just a visiting lecturer. Perhaps with books published under my name. Perhaps with experiences beyond the careful boundaries of suburban Connecticut. What stopped me now? Not age. At 62, I was healthy, mentally sharp, financially secure despite James's diversions. Not obligation. Our son was grown with his own family. Not love. Whatever I had felt for James had been irreparably damaged by his decades of deception. I rose from the garden bench and walked into the house with steady steps. James was in his study, reviewing documents with the focused attention he always gave to financial matters. "I want a divorce," I said from the doorway. He looked up, his reading glasses slipping down his nose. "Helen, be reasonable." "I've been reasonable for 38 years, I interrupted. "I've been patient, understanding, supportive, and forgiving. But I cannot reasonably continue a marriage built on such profound dishonesty." "This is about the château, isn't it?" "I've apologized for that. I've promised not to go back." "This isn't about the château, James. It's about me. For the first time in decades, it's about what I want." "And what do you want?" he asked, his voice almost dismissive. "A life that's truly mine," I answered. "And I'm going to build it, with or without your cooperation." News of my decision spread quickly through our social circle. James had always been the charming one, the successful one, the one people gravitated toward at parties. I had been his pleasant, supportive wife, important primarily in relation to him. Now I was cast in an unfamiliar role, the unreasonable woman destroying a perfect marriage. "Helen, darling, are you absolutely certain about this?" Miranda Collins, my supposed friend of 30 years, reached across the country club lunch table to pat my hand condescendingly. "Men have their projects. Warren collects vintage cars that cost a fortune and take up the entire garage. But divorce? At our age? This isn't about a hobby, Miranda. It's about trust, about honesty." I withdrew my hand from hers. Of course," she nodded, not listening. "But think about your future. The holidays alone, no one to travel with. And the financial complications, splitting assets at this stage of life is so messy." Her concerns echoed what my son had been saying in his daily calls. "Mom, you're being impulsive," Michael insisted each time. "Think about what this means for the family, for your grandchildren, for your security." Even my sister Diane, usually my strongest ally, expressed doubt. "Helen, marriage is complex. No one knows what goes on between two people. But is this worth throwing away everything? What James did was wrong, but men make mistakes." "This wasn't a mistake," I corrected her. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. This was a deliberate choice he made every day for 25 years. The most difficult opposition came from our attorney, Leonard Simmons, who had been our family lawyer and James's golf partner for decades. "Mrs. Thompson," he said during our first consultation, his tone making it clear whose side he was on. "Connecticut is an equitable distribution state, not a community property state. This means the court divides assets fairly, not necessarily equally." "I'm aware of that," I replied. "Given Mr. Thompson's significantly higher earning power throughout the marriage and his continued active income potential compared to your part-time teaching salary, you might find yourself with less than you expect. Perhaps we should discuss reconciliation options." I leaned forward. "Leonard, I've spent 38 years putting James's career first. I've relocated 3 times for his promotions, sacrificing my own career advancement. I've managed our home, raised our son, and supported James in every possible way. If not for my contributions, he wouldn't have had the freedom to build his career." "The courts don't always see it that way," he warned, "and litigation can get expensive." "Then I suggest you refer me to an attorney who specializes in representing women in my situation," I said, rising from my chair. "Someone who understands that value in a marriage isn't measured solely by who earned the larger paycheck." As I walked out of his office, leaving him stammering about rash decisions, I felt something unexpected, a surge of power. For the first time, I was fighting for myself, and it felt remarkably right. The Oxford visiting professorship offer arrived in September, a 6-month position teaching Victorian women's literature beginning in January. I accepted immediately, my first definitive step toward my new life. The timing felt significant, almost karmic. October was approaching, the month James would normally be leaving for France. "Will you still go this year?" I asked him over dinner one evening, our conversations now limited to practical matters. He looked startled by the directness of my question. "I hadn't planned to." "Because you promised not to? Or because you're afraid I'll change the locks while you're gone?" The words came out sharper than I intended. "Because the château is complete," he answered quietly. "The restoration is finished. The opening gala is this month." Something in his tone, a note of genuine loss, stirred my curiosity. Not for reconciliation, but for understanding. 25 years of your life, culminating in one event, and you won't be there? It wouldn't be appropriate given our situation. I made a decision then, one that surprised even me. "I think you should go." His eyebrows rose. "What?" "Go to the gala. See the completion of your project. Get the closure you need." I paused, then added, "But I have one condition." "What's that?" "I'm coming with you." 2 weeks later, we arrived in Burgundy. We stayed at separate hotels, James at his usual accommodations near the château, me at a small inn in the village. We had agreed to meet at the château the following morning. The Château de Lumière deserved its name. In the clear autumn light, it glowed like a fairy tale vision, its pale stone facades restored to pristine condition, intricate gardens cascading down terraced levels to a serene lake. Despite everything, I felt a flicker of awe. It was genuinely beautiful, a masterpiece of restoration. A tall, elegant woman with silver-streaked dark hair approached as I stood admiring the formal gardens. Even without an introduction, I knew immediately who she was. "You must be Helen," Vivienne Laurent said in accented English, extending her hand. "James told me you would be coming. I'm Vivienne." I accepted her handshake, studying the woman who had shared a secret passion with my husband for 25 years. She was striking rather than conventionally beautiful, with intelligent eyes that assessed me just as carefully as I was assessing her. "The château is remarkable," I said, surprising myself with my genuine admiration. "Thank you. It has been my life's work." She gestured toward a stone bench. "Will you walk with me? There are things I believe we should discuss, woman to woman." As we strolled through gardens fragrant with late roses, Vivienne spoke of the château's history, of its near destruction, of her vision for its rebirth. Then, sitting beside a fountain, she addressed what we both knew was the real purpose of our meeting. "I never intended to cause pain to another woman," she said directly. "James and I were never lovers, not since our youth. What we shared was this." She gestured at the château, a dream of restoring something beautiful that the world had forgotten. "Yet he kept it secret from me for 25 years, I replied evenly. "He lied about where he was going, what he was doing, who he was with." Vivienne nodded slowly. "That was his choice, not mine. I asked him many times why he didn't tell you. He always said you wouldn't understand, that you had no interest in historical preservation, in French culture, in impractical dreams, as he called them." "He never gave me the chance to understand," I said, feeling a deep sadness rather than anger. "He decided for me what I could comprehend, what I could accept. That's the real betrayal." Oxford in January was bitterly cold, the ancient stone buildings holding the chill like repositories of winter itself. Yet despite the weather, I felt an unexpected warmth growing within me, the heat of intellectual engagement, of new friendships, of a life expanding beyond boundaries I hadn't even recognized. My small faculty apartment overlooked a cobblestone courtyard where students hurried between lectures. their youthful energy infectious. My Victorian literature seminar quickly became oversubscribed, filled with bright minds eager to explore the works of women who had written under male pseudonyms to have their voices heard. Professor Thompson, your analysis of the economic themes in Jane Eyre completely changed my understanding of the text, a young woman named Amira told me after class one day. Have you published your ideas? I'd love to read more. I hadn't published, had never even considered it a possibility. But the seed was planted, and I began gathering my lecture notes with new purpose. By March, I had submitted an article to a respected literary journal. By April, it had been accepted. Meanwhile, the divorce proceedings continued across an ocean. James had finally accepted the inevitability of our separation after the château gala, where witnessing Vivienne and me in conversation seemed to cement the reality of his two worlds colliding. My new attorney, a formidable woman specializing in gray divorces, negotiated terms that recognized my contributions to our marriage and secured my financial future. Most surprisingly, I found myself embracing new experiences in Oxford. Though I had always loved reading about far-off places, I had rarely ventured beyond our comfortable Connecticut existence. Now I joined a walking group that explored the countryside each weekend, attended chamber music concerts and poetry readings, and even learned to punt on the river, laughing like a schoolgirl when I fell in during my first attempt. You're a natural adventurer, Helen, my colleague Diana remarked after I recounted my river mishap. It's hard to believe you never traveled extensively before. I never gave myself permission, I replied, realizing the truth of my words. I always thought there would be time later, after James retired, after other priorities were settled. That evening, I received an unexpected package from Connecticut. Inside was a small wooden box containing my grandmother's pearl earrings that I had left behind, along with a brief note from James. These always looked beautiful on you. I hope Oxford appreciates the remarkable woman teaching there this term. The note prompted neither regret nor nostalgia, just a quiet acknowledgement that we had once shared something meaningful, even if it hadn't been everything I deserved. That same week, a colleague invited me to dinner at his home. Daniel Harrington, a widowed professor of Renaissance literature, whose gentle humor and thoughtful conversation had brightened many faculty meetings. I've made a reservation at the Trout, he said, naming a picturesque riverside inn. Unless you'd prefer somewhere else? The Trout sounds lovely, I replied, surprised by the flutter of anticipation I felt. At 62, I had never expected to experience the sensation of beginning again. The nervous excitement of dressing for a first date, the careful consideration of conversation topics, the tentative exploration of connection with someone new. Yet there I was, applying lipstick with slightly trembling fingers, wondering if Daniel might take my hand as we walked along the river after dinner. Life, I was discovering, had an unexpected elasticity, a capacity to expand into new shapes after being compressed for so long. The divorce was finalized in August while I was still in England. My 6-month position had been extended to a full year after the English department head suffered an unexpected health crisis. We'd be grateful if you could continue, Helen, the dean had said. Your student evaluations are exceptional. I returned briefly to Connecticut in September to complete the division of our household. The colonial house where we'd lived for 20 years was being sold, with the proceeds to be split according to our settlement. James had already moved to a modern condominium closer to his office. When I arrived at our former home, I found him supervising the movers who were packing his remaining belongings. He looked older, somehow diminished, though it had been less than a year since our separation. Helen, he said, his expression brightening momentarily at the sight of me. You look well. England must agree with you. It does, I admitted. I've been offered a permanent position at the college. Will you take it? He seemed genuinely curious. I'm considering it, I said. And how are you, James? He gestured vaguely. Managing. The firm has asked me to consider retirement next year. Apparently, I'm not as sharp as I used to be. His attempt at a self-deprecating smile failed. Michael tells me you've been seeing someone. Daniel is a colleague, I said, not elaborating on the growing closeness between us. The shared meals, the weekend trips to the Cotswolds, the comfortable silences as we read together in the evenings. James nodded, then hesitated before continuing. There's something you should know. The château. There have been complications. From his halting explanation, I pieced together the aftermath of our confrontation. The château opening had received extensive media coverage, highlighting James's role as Vivian's financial partner. Someone connected to his firm had seen the articles and raised questions about potential conflicts of interest, particularly regarding the significant personal funds James had directed to the project over the years. An internal audit had been conducted. While no illegalities were found, his professional reputation had suffered. The whispers about his French mistress and secret love nest had spread through Hartford's financial circles, despite Vivian's public clarification about the nature of their partnership. I'm sorry, I said, meaning it. Despite everything, I took no pleasure in his humiliation. The irony, he said with a bitter laugh, is that the château has been nominated for a major preservation award. Vivian might win international recognition for what we created together, while I'm being quietly ushered into early retirement. As we finished dividing the last of our shared belongings, photo albums, holiday decorations, kitchen implements that held memories of family gatherings, I felt an unexpected wave of compassion for this man I had spent most of my life with. You know, I said carefully, what you and Vivian accomplished is genuinely impressive. The château is beautiful. Perhaps the mistake wasn't in the restoration itself, but in making it a secret, in not giving me the chance to understand and perhaps even share in that part of your life. That's the thing, James, I replied gently. You decided who I was decades ago and never allowed for the possibility that I might grow, change, or surprise you. You never gave me the chance to discover if I might have loved the château too. His face registered genuine surprise, as if this perspective had never occurred to him. We stood in silence amid the half-empty rooms that had witnessed our life together, a life that was now formally ending. I've always thought of myself as a careful planner, he said finally. I built my career on predicting outcomes, managing risks, yet somehow I never predicted this, us, ending, you, thriving without me. As I left our former home for the last time, I realized that in his own way, James was acknowledging the fundamental flaw in our marriage. He had tried to write both our stories, controlling all the variables, never considering that the greatest risk was in not allowing me to be the author of my own life. A year and a half after discovering James's hidden album, I stood on the stone terrace of my cottage in the Cotswolds, watching spring unfold across the rolling landscape. Daffodils nodded in the gentle breeze, and the ancient apple tree in my small garden was bursting with pale pink blossoms. I had accepted Oxford's permanent position, and, with part of my divorce settlement, purchased this 17th century stone cottage just 3 months ago. The cottage needed work. The roof leaked in 3 places, the plumbing was temperamental, and the garden had been neglected for years. Yet restoring it had become my own passion project, my personal château. Daniel often came to help on weekends, his knowledge of historical architecture proving unexpectedly useful. Our relationship had evolved naturally, without pressure or grandiose expectations, a partnership of equals based on mutual respect and genuine affection. At our age, we both valued companionship over romance, though there was plenty of the latter too. Thinking deep thoughts? Daniel asked, joining me on the terrace with 2 mugs of tea. The early morning sun caught the silver in his beard. reminding me that we were both in the autumn of our lives, yet experiencing an unexpected springtime. "Just reflecting," I replied, accepting the tea gratefully. "Michael and Claire are bringing the grandchildren for Easter next week. It will be their first visit to England." My relationship with my son had slowly mended after the initial friction of the divorce. Claire had been instrumental in this healing, calling me regularly with updates about the children and gently encouraging Michael to see my decision not as rejection of family, but as a courageous new beginning. A breakthrough came when Michael read my published article on female autonomy in Victorian literature. "I never knew you thought about these things so deeply, Mom," he had said during one of our cautious phone conversations. "I guess I never really asked." Over time, he had come to respect my choices, especially as he witnessed my growing happiness and fulfillment. "Emma's been writing me letters about your castle in England," I laughed. "I'm afraid my cottage might disappoint her after such build-up." "We'll take them to Blenheim Palace," Daniel suggested. "That should satisfy her royal expectations." As we discussed plans for the visit, my phone chimed with an incoming email.